Okay, so we will not always be doing this much vocabulary, but we're going to start with some of the vocabulary here for chapter 1. So the 5 W's, or the W's, are the same 5 W's as you've already had. Who, what, when, where, why, how. I know how isn't a W. I've always, well, not even how, actually. That's not one of them, but isn't that one in English? Anyway, it gives the context of the problem. All right, so chapter 1 is basically on writing the 5 W's about a problem. So it gives the context. So without context, numbers are meaningless. So that's why we want to think about the context of the problem. Okay, so we want to think about the 5 W's before we even do anything else with the data because we need the context of the problem. All right, the data are any collection of numbers or images that give information. So it doesn't have to be always numbers, but it's something that gives us information. A data table organizes data. That's basically, you'll see several of these as we go on. Statistics is a lot of writing. I'm just going to be honest with you. It's almost an English class in the way that you need to read things and interpret and write about them. Records are rows in the table, in the data table. You won't probably see a data table even, but it represents who, the who of the 5 W's. Because usually each record is a person or a dog or an item and whatever it is that you're looking at. All right. A case is the general term for records. So why even have it? I have no idea. I don't use these terms that much, to be honest. Variable. This is an important one. Variable are characteristics recorded about an individual, and an individual doesn't have to be a person. All right, it could be an orange if you're studying oranges, but it's whatever characteristic you're recording. So their height, their weight, if it was an orange, the amount of juice you got out of the orange, the miles per gallon from a car, things like that. The units are the subjects of an experiment. It is also usually the who are the units. The subjects of an experiment, I'm going to apologize right now for my handwriting. I'm still getting used to this tablet. Or observation. I usually have much better handwriting. And then categorical variable and quantitative variable. These are important for, All right, you got to know what categorical and quantitative variables. A categorical variable is a variable that tells what category, of course, units are in, so the subjects are in. This is maybe more descriptive, non-numerical data. Now, this does not mean that you can't have a categorical variable that collects numbers. For example, numbers on basketball uniforms or football uniforms, those numbers don't mean anything really. Sometimes they mean like what size the uniform is, kind of. The larger numbers usually have larger sizes sometimes. I don't know, not always. But those numbers really don't mean anything. If you're a 24 in football, it doesn't mean you're the quarterback. All right, it means you like the number 24, or that's the uniform that fit you, or something like that. So the numbers in sports teams are categorical variables versus quantitative variables. So it's not always non-numerical, but it's a category, like eye color, stuff where your data typically is not a number, or if it is a number, it doesn't mean anything. Quantitative variable, it contains measured numerical values with units. All right, so these are usually numerical, quantitative, quantity, numerical, but these numerical values have to have units. All right, so that's kind of, I guess that's the difference between quantitative and categorical. Categorical, if it was a number, it probably would not have units. Okay, so this example, this is really only the only real example today. So as research for an ecology class, students in a college in upstate New York collect data on streams each year. They record a number of biological, chemical, and physical variables, including the stream name, substrate of the stream, acidity of the water, the temperature, and the BCI, which is a measure of biological diversity. So identify the 5 W's. So for this, you need to write a sentence. All right, unless I say just list them, you need to write a sentence. So you kind of are going to summarize what this is. So we're just going to say data on our who are the streams. Those are our who, because those are the subjects of their observation or experiment or the data that they're collecting. Those are the subjects. Okay, so data on streams was collected. And a lot of times you don't know all of the 5 W's, so you aren't going to address them all. Was collected in upstate New York. Okay, so this was obviously the where. All right. The data collected. Okay, so then the next thing is we're basically going to list the variables because that's going to be the what. The what are the variables. Okay, so this part are your what. And then the when. So research, they do it each year. So that's your when. And then why, a lot of times you really don't know why. This is obviously for a class. So this is probably why. Okay, so we're going to say it was collected each year. Oops, year. For an ecology class and included, so it's just, you're just rewriting the statement of the problem basically. Name, substrate, acidity, temp, and BCI. Okay, so there's my 5 W's, and then it says name, specify each variable, including units. So name is going to be categorical. All right, it doesn't have any units, it's categorical. It's a name. All right, substrate, you have choices there. It's either limestone, shale, or mixed. That's going to be categorical. So there are no units. Okay, so we're just looking at the variables that they're collecting for the data, the characteristics that they're collecting about the streams, and we're classifying them as categorical or quantitative. And if it's quantitative, you need to give units. All right, so then acidity of the water is pH. That is quantitative. And I don't know, excuse me, I don't know the units of that. So I'm just going to put a question mark for the units because I don't know the units of pH. I think there are units, or maybe pH is the units. I don't know. The temperature is obviously quantitative, and the units are degrees Celsius. And then BCI is numerical, as a numerical measure of biological diversity. So this is obviously quantitative. But again, they don't say what the units are, and unless I Google it, I don't know what the units are. So I'm just going to put a question mark. Or maybe we should have said acidity and the units are pH. I don't know. All right, so I think there are units to pH, but it's been a long time. Anyway, so those are your variables and units and all of that. So if you're supposed to identify the 5 W's, typically you want to write that out in a nice sentence. So it's almost like you're just restating the statement that they gave you for the problem when you're doing that. All right, the last example for today, short set of notes, is are 15, 25, 17, 32, and 61 data? Why or why not? The answer is no. There's no context. All right, if numbers don't have context, then they are not data. If they're not connected to something, they are not data. So that is the answer.